Welcome back to my channel. Thanks for coming. Here we go. So I got my scorched timber yesterday and I'm taking my first look at it here, and I did buy the complete bundle. And what I'm going to be doing here is kind of reviewing, getting a first reaction, and seeing how I like it. And so let's go ahead and get started and we'll make a card. All right, so first thing I want to test out, I think, is probably the watercolor pencil. But I've got the ink, I've got the Oxide. I'm going to use pretty much most of these products. I don't think I'll be using the Distress Glaze at this moment, but I'm definitely going to test out the Oxide spray and the ink spray, the Oxide and the ink and the paint, and the watercolor pencil. And of course I got the little pen. Let's move everything out of the way here. And the first thing I'm going to test here is this pencil. So I'm going to grab a piece of watercolor paper, and I decide after using the pencil that I'm just going to go ahead and create a whole background rather than sitting here swatching for you. But I did want to show you kind of how it works. So I'm just going to color a little area here. And then I'll grab a brush, and generally I like to just spray some water onto my surface and then use that as my water. So I'll get my brush wet, and let's go ahead and move this paint around a little bit. So far as the watercolor pencil goes, I'm loving the color. I've gone fairly light with it, and then I'm just spreading out just to see where it goes. Yeah, so far so good. Here's a closer look at that. So I can see actually using this for shading skin, but we'll see. I'm going to pour out some paint here though. Give it a good shake. Make sure I get everything all mixed up, and then pull off that little safety cap. And I'll go ahead and use what's on the cap first, because why not, right? There's no point in wasting it. I'm going to grab some tweezers because it's too small for me to grab with my fingers. I'm just going to flip it over, grab that piece of hair off of there, and tap it down onto my mat. And then add a little bit of water, and I'm going to just do some smushing. So you can smush with paint just the same way you smush with ink. And with the Tim Holtz Distress ink or paint, it is still water reactive until it's dry, so I can get my little effects on there. And so I dip, spray, and dry, dip, spray, and dry, dip, spray, and dry. But you want to dry it. Once it's dry, it's not moving, it's not going anywhere. So there's the beautiful, like the really deep dark all the way up to the light with the paint. And let's go ahead and continue with the paint for a little bit here. Now I'm going to give this a dry, and then I'm going to dip it some more. Give it a little bit more water, get it moving around, and then give it another dry. So I'm building layers here with the paint, and I really love the reactions that you get with the paint. So I'm just kind of letting the paint move around as I dry it, and I like to use my embossing tool for drying. For the most part, I do use my heat tool, and then I'll just dab up the excess, and let's get some more on there. Let's see if I can grab any more off of my mat. Yeah, a little bit more for sure. And I'll go ahead and wipe that off. Oh, I like the looks of that. That looks really cool. Oh, but we're not stopping here, so no worries. I've dried it off, and I'm going to grab a little bit more paint. And it's just a tiny drop, and add some water. Kind of mix it around with my finger because that's my favorite tool. And let's get some color on the bottom of this thing going. Just keep in mind that once I dry this paint, it's on there. So if I want to do other things with it, I can do that without any worries of messing up what I've already got. So I'm going to go ahead and dry that. And now that I've got that dry, I'll go ahead and dip it some more. Again, layers, friends, layers. This is how you get the look. Just be patient, dry it, put the layers on, and you get all those beautiful little dots and things that make my heart happy anyway. And then you can add more water or dry it, and I'm just going to dry it. And then I'm looking at this, and I'm like, you know what, let's just go ahead and dip this on there. Why not? So I just take and dip that on there. Random spots. No rhyme or reason, really, although I'm trying to get a really dark spot just so I can see the full depth of this color. And then I'll go ahead and add some water and get it moving around and dry it. And there we go. We've got all of our paint on here. And I'm just dabbing off anything that's still wet. And I'm loving it. So the first thing I thought when I saw this is it's going to look beautiful with pink. So I decided to go in with the Victorian Velvet, and I'm using the Distress Spray Stain. And I am loving this color with the Scorched Timber. It's just awesome. So I'm just adding a little water, and you see nothing's moving where my paint was. It's all staying where I put it. So I'm going to dry this and look for little, you know, soaky bits and wipe off my workspace again. And I'm not worried about the size because I will trim this down. I always do. My watercolor paper is always wider than I need it to be. So now what I want to do is I want some small splatters of water. So I'm just going to grab some water on my brush, on my little fan brush, and create those small spatters. And those are only going to impact the Victorian Velvet that I've sprayed on there. And I'll just go ahead and wipe off the sides there. So far, just loving it. And then I'll go ahead and just blot this off. Just with a paper towel. And that'll blot off, it'll, you know, pull some of that ink off of some spaces there, but not giant blobs just yet. Give us some time. We'll get some blobbing going on there. And we do have some with our Scorched Timber. All right, so let's carry on here. Let's go ahead and trim this down to my card front size, which is going to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I usually cut my watercolor 6 by 4 1/2. So I have a lot more length to cut off than I do width, but that's okay. And I'm just making sure that's lining up there on the grid lines on the trimmer versus lining up on the bottom. Because, you know, once you're wetting and drying your watercolor paper, of course, it's going to warp. And so I want to make sure that I get it as straight as possible. So I'm good with that. So far, so good. Okay, so I love the paint. The paint is awesome. I'm going to go ahead and go in with some ink now. And I am using the Flower Shop stamp set. And I'm going to use this little, I don't know, bill of sale or something. And I'm going to dip it into the Scorched Timber. And it's a really juicy ink pad, as you can see. I'm trying to kind of tap it off, but still get more ink on there, because I don't mind if it gets juicy and messy. Wow. Oh my gosh. Look at that color, you guys. Oh my word. That is beautiful. I absolutely adore the ink. Okay. It's just rock and roll. Look at that. So it's not black, but it's definitely dark and impactful. So let's go ahead and stamp down the rose too. And I mean, I end up covering up most of that rose anyway, but you know, I'm just doing it because I'm testing my ink. So we'll stamp that down, and I'm going to put it right about there. Wow, that ink color is just amazing. And then I'm going to go ahead and dry everything so I can move on to my next step. Okay, guys, so far, loving the ink, loving the paint, loving the pencil. So now I'm going to grab the Oxide here, and I'm going to grab one of these little mini blenders, and I'm going to edge this with the Distress Oxide in the Scorched Timber. Look at that. Wow. If you're a brown person, and I am a brown person, well, I love all colors, hence my name, Not Afraid of Color, but I also love my browns and my grungies and my vintage and my Tim Holtz period, but yeah. So this is the Oxide in action, just edging the edges, so I'm covering up that white. And then I go up a little bit on the corners of the edges just to kind of vignette a little bit more on the background. Yeah, look at that. Oh, I'm really happy with that. I love this ink. Okay, so what's next? What are we going to do next? Let me think this over here a minute. What I have here, I don't have a lot of Tim Holtz Valentine stuff, or basically anybody's Valentine stuff. Not my favorite holiday. I won't say I'm anti-Valentine, but I just, but I do have this Falling Hearts, and I do have this little funky wreath, and I'm going to use the wood funky wreath, and I'll cut that out on camera, but I'll cut everything else off camera. And I'm just using my little Empress here to cut it out. And I'm going to cut 2 of them. So I'll cut the other one off camera because it does take a little time to poke all those little bits out. Not too much. There's not a bunch of tiny bits in that. But it's cut out perfectly. Now I've got 2 cut out, and I've cut out all the hearts from the Falling Hearts. And I'm using the Victorian Velvet Distress Oxide here to color my hearts using my pouncer tool. And one thing, these are on a waffle flower sticky mat. You want to, because it's watercolor paper and it's textured on the back, it doesn't stick as well as like a straight paper would. And then I'm going to go ahead and splatter some water on there to get that oxidizing. And then I'm going to go ahead and splatter some of the Oxide, the Scorched Timber Oxide on there, so that we've got all our colors kind of tying in together with our little grungy hearts. And then on the wreaths, I'm going to do one with the Distress Spray and one with the Distress Oxide Spray and the Scorched Timber. And so the ink is probably my favorite. The Oxide is fine, no problem with it. But the ink, now all I'm doing here is cleaning up with another piece of paper, and I will post a picture of another card I made with that piece of paper, but I didn't want to waste all that yummy ink. So okay, I've got all my parts here. I've got my background. Ignore that pink border because it's coming off of there. I changed my mind about it. And I used one of the silhouette birds, and I used the Scorched Timber, the Victorian Velvet, and I used some Uncharted Mariner Distress Oxide on that bird. So I'm going to go ahead and glue down my wreaths, and I'm going to offset one off the other, so it's not perfectly round, but it's rounder looking and it's got more dimension. And I'm going to put the Distress Oxide one at the bottom and put the Distress Ink one at the top. So you can see I really saturated that thing, so I did not want to waste my ink on wiping it up. All right, just lay that down, make sure it's nice and glued. And I have, in my glue bottle, I have not Nouveau glue. I have a different kind of glue in there, which I like better. I'm using the Barely Arts in there, and I like it better than the Nouveau. So I just switched it out and put my own glue in. And you can do that. So there's that. And I will link that down below as well. And I'll link everything that I used in the video. All right. Yep, loving it, loving it, loving it. Wait till you see, now the Scorched Timber looks terrific and beautiful with the Uncharted Mariner, but wait till you see it with faded jeans. Oh my word, it's so gorgeous. Yep, here's my opinion of this ink. I feel like it plays well with everyone, but specifically pastels. It's like it's kind of an opposites attract thing. So what I'm doing here is just adding little dots of glue, and then I'm just going to use my picker tool and lay little hearts all over my little wreath. And these are all my little grunged up hearts. I'm just kind of laying them on there randomly. I'm not laying them on the top because I'll be putting a ribbon on the top. And the ribbon is just some, that I use is just some hem tape that I sprayed with probably picked raspberry and vintage photo. I made a bunch of it a while back, and so I just use it as needed. And then I'm going to leave a little space there for the bird as well. This is just wow. So when you wet the Scorched Timber Distress Oxide, it almost has an ashy gray look to it. And I'm thinking that you could make a really awesome fire log, including the fire and the ashy part where the flames are coming up from, all with just the scorched timber, minus your fire. So I'll be experimenting with that at a later date. We'll just get my hearts on here for now. Okay, so I want to add my little bird. There's my bird. So I'm grabbing some of my Simon Says stamps. They're the taller Dealy Bobs. These bouncy foam. I can't think of the name. You know what I mean. Anyway, from Simon Says Stamps, and they're black. So I'm adding them to the top part of the bird, but I'm leaving the tail, because I'm going to try and glue the tail kind of down to the card so that the bird is popped up on the wreath, but his tail's down. We'll see how that works out. Foam squares, this is what those are called. Sorry about that, you guys. I'm telling you, I'm such a space cadet. They didn't call me Spacey Tracy in high school for nothing. So down goes our bird. I'm just going to kind of hold that there for a minute until the glue takes hold, because I did put extra glue on there, so I had a little wiggle room. And then his tail doesn't want to stay down, so I just kind of let it dry until it gets tacky, and then I push it down, so that's fine. And then I want to add these bigger hearts that come in the Falling Heart set. So there are 3 individual bigger hearts. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure this is the only Tim Holtz Valentine stuff I have. But I like those little funky hearts. So right now I'm just auditioning where I might want them to go inside the wreath. That's the hardest part, is figuring out where to put things. So I'm not really happy with that configuration, so I'll move it around until I am happy. Maybe there, nah, maybe here, maybe. Let's see. Maybe we'll do the medium-sized one on top of it. Well, that's the small one, and do the medium-sized one a little down a little further. Maybe they're all going to pile together. Yeah, I kind of like it like that. Let's see if I want a 4th one here. So I cut 2 sets of those. No, I think I want it in 3s, so I'm going to go ahead and go with my design that I just chose. And I am going to put one of the little hearts on the little bird's chest. There we go. Little love. And then I'll go ahead and glue my bigger pieces down. And for the most part, my most dimension is on the bird on this card. You could go with a lot more, but it's likely I'll mail this to one of my sons, or maybe, I don't know, one of my friends or something. Like a Galentine or some. I'm married, and I love my husband, but I'm just not a big fan of Valentine's Day. Could have been some past experiences. Who knows? Oh, my goodness. I do love it, though, when Papa Murphy's has the heart-shaped pizzas. So there's that. There's a bonus. All right, so we've got all this going on here, and then I'm going to go ahead and get my bow. And what you saw me do was grab my bow, and I tied a mess instead of a bow. So off camera, I fought and tied myself a bow. And I'm just going to add a big old glob of glue on there, set something heavy on it, and let it dry, because I don't have any of those little booger glue dot things. So those apparently work really well, but I don't have any, so there's that. I know you can make them with, like, I think Aleene's Tacky Glue makes a glue that you can make those with. And I've made them before, and they're here somewhere, but, I can't be asked to look for them. I'm busy here. I'm creating, not shopping, not looking for things. So I like this. All I want to do now is I'll let that dry, and then I'll come back and I'll kind of clean off the excess glue. And I just need a sentiment here for this. I'm happy with the little bow, and I've got a little bit of foam tape on the back of this, and I'm just going to pop it up. Actually, what I have is fun foam. I'm going to pop it up with some glue onto a craft card base. And I've got my sentiment ready, and that sentiment comes from one of my Tim Holtz sentiment sticker books. I don't remember which one, but I tend to use those a lot. And all I did was pull it out, and then I stuck it onto another piece of paper, a firm cardstock, probably a piece of scrap watercolor. And then I colored it with the Victorian velvet, and I edged it with the scorched timber. And that's just going to get glued down right here. Sorry about that, guys. My nose has just decided to start running. I don't know why it does that when I'm doing a voiceover, but my nose likes to talk too, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. So I'm trying to decide whether I want to pop this up or not. And ultimately, I decide against it. So I'm just going to go ahead and glue this down, and this card's done. I do want to thank you for letting me into your space and watching my video. And if you haven't tried the Scorched Timber, I hope you'll consider trying it. I will link the inks down below, plus all of the goodies that I used here to create this card that I can find, okay? I'm sure that you can still get the Falling Hearts. I don't know. I know you can get the Funky Florals, this one, in some of Tim's new stuff. I can't remember if it was smaller or not. Sorry, Tim. I don't remember. I'm a space cadet. Thanks for coming. If you like this video, please pop me a thumbs up and leave a comment down below if you have any questions or whatever. Have a great one. Bye-bye.